what's the deal? Can people reverse the graying of their hair by reducing their stress? Can people accelerate the graying of their hair by stressing more?
Likely both are true, yes.
Okay.
And I think what we discovered is that hair graying, at least temporarily, is reversible. And this was surprising because it goes against this notion that aging is a linear, process that just happens over time, no matter what you do. And here we should know, actually, a hallmark of aging, which is, depigmentation, losing color in your beard and your hair, is something that happens to almost everyone, but at different, stages of life and so on. And then on the same person, and the reason we got into this was that this felt like the perfect experiment. Like you have every hair on your body is about 100,000 hairs on your head. Every hair has the same genome. They're all genetically identical twins, right? And they're all exposed to the same exercise regime, the same food, the same stress levels. But yet some hairs go gray when you're like late 30s, and then some hairs go gray when you're like in your 80s. What the hell's happening? Like if we could figure this out, the basis for the heterogeneity, right? The hair to hair heterogeneity, maybe we can understand why different people age at different rates. Because it's very clear that there's no more than 10% of how long you live that's genetically driven. Like the best studies put this at around 7%. 7% of longevity is genetically inherited maybe, and then about 90% is not.
Is lifestyle factors.
Lifestyle, food, exposures, like whatever is non-genetic.
People will take solace in those numbers.
Yeah, I think those are really powerful numbers, and they surprise me because I had learned, through my training, education, that the majority of how long you live is your parents, and I think this is legacy. It's like dogma. It's not science-based. It's dogma from the Human Genome Project era. Like through the 90s, we were hoping we would find the gene for cancer, the gene for heart failure, the gene for Alzheimer's, the gene for schizophrenia, and then the human genome was sequenced 2001, and then there was like 10, 20 years of GWAS, genome-wide association studies, trying to find people who have this disease and trying to find which gene do they have that other people don't have, right? Those large-scale studies. And if the if the Human Genome Project and the search for causal genes for common chronic diseases had been an RCT, it would have failed its primary endpoint. I think if we're real about this, the hypothesis was wrong. It was a useful hypothesis, like many hypotheses are. It led us to learn a bunch, and the human genome, the sequencing that was such a driver of progress in biomedical science. But it's failed to solve the big mysteries about why we get sick, when we get sick. No genes will tell you this.
I would say the Human Genome Project, like so many things, the brain connectome, proteomes, inflammatomes, necessary but not sufficient.
Correct.
We want and need the information, but it's not sufficient to demonstrate anything except it's a hypothesis-generating experiment.
Yeah,
I know this because I sat on grant panels for a long time, and you look at these incredible studies, like we're going to measure the difference between this cancer cell and that cancer cell and this, and it's great, but the information you get is necessary, but it's not conclusive of anything. But it is good work.
Yeah, it's good. Of course, it's good. There's a lot of really high quality science that's happening. But I think in general, academic science has kind of lost track with its core purpose. And now we have like an incentive system, and there's a lot of forces at play in administrative, processes that don't serve the primary end goal, which is...
it's all getting revised now. So it's for better or worse, it's all getting revised. So I see your point. I'm warmed by the fact that even though my parents are still alive and are doing well, thank goodness, that only 7% of longevity is dictated by the genes. So if you have parents that lived a long time, this also means you got to upkeep is important, but what you do is key. So with respect to, look, graying hair isn't the most important problem. People can dye their hair, right, if they want to. People can shave their head if they're losing hair. Like there are a bunch of ways around this monumental problem of graying hair. But I think what it illustrates is really interesting. So
that there's plasticity.
Yeah. So could you explain the result?
So when we started to think about this, we thought, what if we found hairs that have, like the same hair has two colors, right? So you have a piece of a segment of the hair that is dark and then a segment that is white. And then if you could find a hair that was dark, so the tip of your hair, used to be inside the body.
Yeah.
Just like it's a bit like tree rings, right? If you cut down a tree and you look at the tree rings, you can basically go back in time and say, oh, 20 years ago, there was a fire here, right? And then 45 years ago, there was a drought and the tree rings look different. And so there's information encoded in the structure, right? So we all walk around with kind of a molecular record, like a physical timeline of our biological history. Because
stressed, relaxed, good relationship, bad relationship. Yeah.
So and hairs grow at about...
Writing a grant after the grant. Yeah.
That was actually part of the data for that study. I was one of the participants early on because we became interested in this. We found hair that were two colors. The tip was dark and then the root was white. And then we thought, oh, if we can like figure out that hair transition, and then if you measure it and you know how quickly the hair grows, then you can say, okay, 2.5 months ago, right? And you can look at the calendar and say, about here, this hair went from being dark to being white. What happened in this person's life, right? So that was the idea. And then back then, my partner went to the bathroom, and then she brought back, like, she had very long hair, and then you could see, like, clearly the same hair, two different colors. It's like, shit, aging, hair graying is there's plasticity here. And then we found hairs where the hair was white and it went back to being dark. And this was a little confusing. And then we had one participant who brought a young Asian woman, and her hair was so beautiful. She had like really dark hair, and then the root was dark. And then there was a segment, 2 centimeters, about like almost an inch of white. And then the rest of the hair was dark again.
What happened in that 2 centimeters? Did she share?
Exactly. So that became the question. So then we said, okay, we need to do this quantitatively.
She didn't tell you what had happened?
No. We were collecting hairs in Ziploc bags. So now people started to mail us, Ziploc bags with hair. And we got some hairs from France, hairs from Canada, from different places in the US, across body regions in South Asian, African American, white. So it was clearly real. And then we thought we need to develop an objective, semi-quantitative method to quantify stress. Because we quantify now, we bought a scanner, old style, like photo digitization system. So we bought one of those high-end scanners, and then we could iron out like a single hair, tape it down, and then like scan at super high resolution. So then we can get like a digital readout of the hair, like tree rings. And then you could see, okay, the hair was dark, and there's actually information. There's like, it looks like EEG almost, but we're looking at hair color, and then it lost color. So then you can say, okay, this is the point. And then we needed something similar for psychological states, right? What happened in this person's life? Ideally, you would get blood or saliva or something else, but we could go back in time with this. And then I sat down with this participant and said, okay, this is now, and this is a year ago. And then you can look at your calendar. What was the most stressful part of the past year? And then for her, it was very clear. And then what was the least stressful part of the last year? And then people rate this. There's the y-axis is most stressful at the top, least stressful, 0 at the bottom. And then they put points and then connect the dots, right, with the line. So then you end up with a line graph of someone's, recall of their stress levels anchored in some, objective life events. So that was the methodology we use. And for her, and she had sent us the hair a few months ago, and then, we were doing the interview, and her profile was so beautiful. And she said, I submitted my thesis. She just graduated her PhD at Stanford, actually. And then she had a chill summer, and everything was okay. Then she had some issues with her boyfriend, and they broke up. And then she was like in crisis. What do I do with my life? Do I, get this job or that job? She had to go to Europe for some family issues. And then she ended up moving to New York City, getting a job, reconnecting with her boyfriend, and then life was great. And her graph looked, exactly like this. And that period lasted 2 months. And
it mapped to the gray zone.
It mapped surprisingly perfectly with the graying, right, where the hair lost color. So it was the hair, the stress peaked for 2 months and then came back down. She said these were the most stressful 2 months of my life.
Super interesting. and the paper's got a lot of press as it should be.
I've received about 300 emails since that paper was published. People from sending me pictures from all over the world saying like, I found this two-colored hair. I thought I was crazy. Googled this and found your paper.
When I was growing up, my dad told me that he had a cousin who worried so much that he went to bed one night and woke up and all his hair was on the pillow. And I didn't know until I was an adult that story was designed to get me to stress less and that it wasn't completely true. But that's hair loss, not graying. But is there any graying of hair, beard hair or head hair, that is just simply related to age? Or can we say that any graying of hair that's age associated is likely to be associated with the increased inflammation that comes with aging, aka stress, a different kind of stress, not psychological stress?
Yeah, maybe it depends how we define stress. We define stress as anything that costs energy.
Well, inflammation costs energy.
Inflammation costs energy, and making a cytokine costs energy. And if you're a cell and you have a receptor for a cytokine, and the cytokine docks, the ligand docks, that's going to cost energy.
It occurred to me that based on what you've told us, that when we're young, we need a lot of energy. And we don't want kids to overeat, but they need energy. And their levels of inflammation are very low. Kind of a perfect situation for development. As we get older, we generally move a bit less or a lot less.
Or a lot less, yes.
But ideally, it's just a bit less. Or maybe we move more. And in general, people need to eat less, not more, as a rule.
Yep.
Okay, but there are always exceptions to that rule. But there's a lot more inflammation, so we're actually much more energetically expensive because of inflammation as we age.
Yep.
And I'd be willing to bet that some of the graying of hair is related to the aging inflammation thing. I mean, my level of stress, who knows what it is, because it's been, jagged line for so many years. I don't know what baseline is. I drink caffeine, like most people, we're masking a lot of the things that are going on. But I love the results showing that increased stress grays hairs and reducing stress ungrays hairs.
It's a correlation.
It's a correlation, but it's a really cool result. I want to talk about restoration and recovery of energy.
Maybe with the hair graying, I think what connects the hair graying with everything else we've talked about is the analysis we did of knowing like molecularly what happened when this one hair goes gray and then it recovers its color. What's happening energetically? So we took a single hair and chopped it into pieces and did proteomics.
You have to, because you're a molecular biologist, right?
And I mean, mitochondria is our way to tap into the biology of energy. So then we thought maybe there's something there. And initially, I didn't think there was mitochondria in the hair. It turns out every hair that we walk around with is loaded with mitochondrial DNA. And forensic, if you find a hair on a crime scene, you can figure out who is there. The DNA that gets sequenced is not the nuclear genome; it's a mitochondrial genome.
Really?
And because hairs have a very high concentration of mitochondrial DNA.
See, guys, you can't commit a crime and expect to get away with it, because if you leave one hair, Martin's lab is going to sequence it.
We don't do forensics.
Sure,
but
you don't.
What the molecular signature that was the most robust, comparing the white hair to the dark hair in the same person, or comparing white to dark in different people, was mitochondrial proteins. And I did not expect that. And we repeated those experiments in 2 different proteomics core. The proteomics core hated that experiment because hair is like notoriously, it's full of keratin, those super high abundance proteins, and then they mask every other signal. But we were able to kind of get good resolution data for other non-keratin, non-hair proteins. And 3 mitochondrial proteins were consistently upregulated. There was more of the mitochondrial energy transformation machinery in the gray hair compared to the dark hair.